Okay, so it's coming up to Halloween and I've started to see loads of pumpkins, decorations, and obviously skeletons at this time of year. Now, for anyone that's familiar with my artwork, you'll know that I'm a big fan of the skeleton form. I'm drawing vertebrae and spines and all these kind of details that you find within the human skeleton. I've done a lot of drawings over the years, a lot of studies, and I've also done a lot of artwork, kind of surreal sci-fi, inspired by the human skeleton, especially the spine. So an opportunity like this to come back and do something that's quite topical, but it also relates to something that I'm very, very interested in. I thought it would be a great opportunity to get involved and delve into that a little bit. Now, I'm far from a medical professional's sort of knowledge of the different names of the vertebrae and what the different functions, the different parts are, but I have an artist's sort of visual understanding of certain parts. So that's mainly the focus that I'm going to be coming from. Anyone that knows better about some of the terms and some of the different parts, please feel free to leave your comments in the comment section. Be more than interested to learn some more about the kind of different sections. So I'm going to teach some of the basics, really, some of the things that you may want to apply when actually trying to draw the spine to begin with, and I'm going to do quite a lot of different videos as well. But when it comes to drawing the spine, I'm going to be using a HB pencil. Let me just change it. I'm going to have the size on the maximum, the opacity on the maximum. I'm just going to maybe choose a slightly lighter grey, so that if I press on lightly there you can see, and then the darkest I get. So it's like a kind of graphite look, really, because if I changed it to solid black, it has a very different kind of look. It's very difficult to get a pencil feel to it then, so I'm just going to slightly grey it out like so. So I'll probably start with the easiest of the three different angles. So I'll do the front, the rear, and the side view of the spine. What I suggest you do first of all is get a vertical line drawn in so that you know that all of the details are going to be aligned correctly. I'm going to go straight up, it doesn't start to go wonky. Better to keep this line quite light, really. So either you can erase if you're using an iPad, or if you're using rubber, obviously you can rub it out as well, or an eraser. The first thing we need to do is get the top and the bottom of the spine located. So what I'm going to do initially is just split it into some of the sections. So I'm just going to do some very basic shapes, splitting it into roughly what's going to be the kind of the shape of the kind of coccyx, that area of the spine. And then you're going to have another section which is going to have the kind of lower back vertebrae. Then you're going to have another area which is going to contain the vertebrae that where the rib cage largely is, and then you're going to have a top section where the sort of neck vertebrae largely sit. So you can see of those sections that the vertebrae that are contained within the neck area are large, is pretty much the smallest of the sections. And these two sections are roughly the same, and then the largest section is going to be for the area where the rib cage would largely be. So for this section you're going to have to split it into 5 sections. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first thing you need to do is start to just box in some of these shapes. There's going to have to be a small gap between them. They will also get a little bit narrower as they go up, so they'll start off slightly wider at the bottom and then just pinch in a little bit towards this section. Now, in terms of the overall shape, they will curve in at the edges like this. So it will just sort of pinch in right in the centre of each of these. Now bear in mind, when we do come to do the side view, you'll get something like this shape. So you have to bear in mind that this section is going to be curved when it's at this area. It's going to be curved like that, then it will straighten up, and then it will start to curve like this. So you're going to get different angles on imagine it like a cylinder. So you're going to get different perspectives on it. You're going to get sometimes where it curves like this, sometimes when it straightens up, and then other times where it's going to be like this. So you get different perspectives whether you're looking down on it, whether you're looking up at it, or whether you're looking straight ahead at it. So at the bottom, you're going to get a curve at the bottom of the shape, and you're also going to get a slight curve on the top too. And it's going to follow the same sort of shape roughly. Zoom in a section actually. You're going to get roughly the same kind of shape here. It's going to straighten up a little bit more here, straighten up a bit more here too. And then it's going to just start curving the other way slightly when it gets to these points. You don't want to overdo it because it is only a small amount. And then we can start adding some details in here. So again, there's going to be the gaps between each of these, so we can perhaps just shade those in just to illustrate that point. So obviously you'll get the sort of discs between each vertebrae. which obviously sometimes you can slip a disc and then your vertebrae will sort of grind together, but ordinarily there should be a sort of cushion between the different bones. Now when it comes to do this section, you will actually continue to get a separation of the shape. So you're going to have the bottom of the coccyx here, and you're going to have the top that then feeds into the hip bone, but it's going to have sort of wings that stick out on either side. So it's almost like a smiley face that then kicks up and then comes down again. Then curves up into a cavity, a hole shape in this area. And then that's the point at which you get like another separation, another line. So similar to these lines, then it continues down into this area of the skeleton, of the spine. Then it's going to come down, it's going to split again at this point. So let's continue to draw the splits. So we're going to have the one section here, second section, third section, and then you're going to get a big shape, and then you're going to get some smaller details at the bottom. So you're going to have quite a number of sections, but in terms of the largest shapes, you're going to have 4 large shapes and then a small cluster of shapes at the bottom. So let's just shade in these because they are going to be like a deep recess, a hole. So again, it's going to pinch in here. You're going to have another space for another gap, another hole. Like so. It's going to curve over and then join in at the side. The next one down, again, is going to curve up. And over to the side. It's going to have a much bigger space on this section for the hole, and you can see, perhaps you wouldn't see daylight coming through, but you can see more clearly a gap. And then you will also have another hole here as well. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of holes here in this section. Okay, so let's continue drawing that shape. And the reason I wanted to get a bit more detail in this is so that if you understand what it looks like in more detail and closer up, then when you come to draw the full skeleton, you'll be able to do a more accurate job even if you don't go into the same level of detail. Now I appreciate not everyone's going to need to know this level of detail on a skeleton, and that's fine, but it is useful to learn the more detailed version, or at least to have a better understanding of it, so then when you try and do a rough skeleton, a bit of a simpler one, you know what should be there, so you'll do a better job even when it doesn't have as much detail on it. A lot of artists that are able to do things quickly and roughly, it's because they know exactly what is there to begin with, and so they're able to come up with like a shorthand for it really, so they can do a simplified version. But you can't do simplified versions of things properly, effectively, until you really understand what's there, I think. So I'm just going over it, adding a bit of shading here and there, just to help emphasize the forms that are actually within the section. Then what happens is you get a strange little shape here at the bottom that kicks out. Now I'm using quite a large pencil stroke here, so when I zoom out it'll be a tiny detail, but yeah, perhaps not as refined as it could be if I was using more like a technical pencil. Then you might get more accuracy within these forms, but it's fine. It's mainly for viewing at this sort of distance anyway, so I'm not too concerned about the accuracy of the tiniest detail. If I was doing a study of just this section of the skeleton, then I might get even more focused on the detail, but I just want to show you the whole of the spine, so I'm more concerned about all of this than just that for now. So it's a little bit rougher in places, but that's fine. Try and get it more symmetrical. Use the eraser in places. Try not to be overly reliant on the eraser. Some corrections, some lines left on there is absolutely fine. It's not a finished work of art to go on a wall. It is a working drawing, so that's fine. Now you're going to get some shadow here. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the other shapes. I may come back and refine some of these details later, but I'm just going to move on to the other forms. So these are going to have some sections that kick out here. Now later on, you'll get the ribs that emerge from each vertebrae. But in these sections, you've got little areas that stick out. So they almost look like ears growing out of the side, really, sort of little bits that stick out. So it's almost like you've got a sort of a thing on the end and then some more rounded shape on the very end of it, and then it pinches in slightly as it then sort of joins at the end. Now it's more located, it's not bang in the centre, it's more, so if there's the centre line, it's a little bit above that line, as you can see. these start to get gradually smaller as they go. So they stick out quite a way here, but then as they go further up, which is one of the aspects I've always found really fascinating about the spine, is that you get this repetition of shape, but as it goes along, it morphs into different versions of the same form. And then on the last one of this section, you're going to get the smallest, sort of stumpiest bits that stick out. So by the time you get up to the top of the spine, you get almost a completely different shape than you do at the bottom. And yet, you know, a lot of people tend to think that it's the same shape all the way along, and it's far from that, really. And that's what I find the most fascinating about it. So there will be shading that will help enhance the look of that. I'll come back to that, and I'm going to continue up the spine, come up the forms first, and then maybe go back over it and refine them a little bit more afterwards. So we've got this central area now, which is where the ribs are going to join on. So what you'll find is that you get nothing like the same sticking out sections, because now almost the ribs that are a separate bone would attach here. But we do have to fit a lot more of these vertebrae into this section. So there's going to be 12 different parts to this. So the way I'm going to do this is going to split it in half. So now I know that 6, roughly the same kind of the depth anyway, you need to go in each section. So they are going to be, again, pinched in a bit more because it's getting narrower as it goes up. So there's my first 6. And it doesn't continue to get much thinner, it just reaches a thin point and then it continues. And then we're going to get another 6 in here. Like so. So it may take a bit of refining as I go over these. Some of them might seem a little bit more squashed than others, but roughly you're going to get 6 in each section, or 12 in total for that area, and this is where the ribs are going to grow out of. I'm not going to add the ribs on this drawing. I'm going to do this on a future tutorial and concentrate on how to construct more of this sort of middle area. But now that I've got these forms in, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now you can see it in context. I'm just going to help refine these shapes a little bit. So they do pinch in the center like this, so you will get curves on each end. Now you can see the center line here, so it was crucial to do that because it so easily could go off and lean on one side. I will just use the eraser just slightly to help them pinch in at the edges, because initially I drew the boxes. Now I just need to get rid of those little bits, so it helps with the look of it pinching in there at the sides. So what will happen now is that you get a big contrast between the bits that stick out on the side here compared to here. So you're just going to get some small sections that stick out, and as they go up, they get gradually bigger again. So again, it's like a kind of round shape here at the end. So you can almost imagine like a circle here, and then it's stuck on the end of like a stalk or something. So here we've reached the sort of halfway point of these 12, and they're really starting to get more substantial at this point. And again, they're not going to be in the center, they're going to be, in fact I'm going to adjust that slightly, it's going to be more up towards the upper section, to the point now that they almost start to appear more in line with the gap in actual fact. Looking at it, I feel like I need to just widen a couple of these just to make it more symmetrical actually, and more balanced as it goes up, just a little bit. It's going to be in shadow anyway on this side, so I can afford to go over it a little bit. Now as it reaches this top section, you're going to get some really smaller vertebrae. There's sort of 7 sections all condensed within this small area here, and you can see how small it is compared to the rest. It's not a big section at all. So if I just start to divide it up to begin with, to make sure we've left ourselves space for 7. So I'm going to just erase that line, because that's not going to be the true start of the next one. It's going to start here, in fact. It's going to be just a little bit narrower than the one below it. So there, I roughly split it into 7 sections. It's going to have a slightly different form to these, so it's almost like they become more of a cone shape almost at the top. So they pitch slightly there at the edges, rather than being sort of more straight, they kind of go more at an angle. What also happens here is you start to notice more of the kind of shape, so you almost get the gaps showing through in areas too, where you can see the holes. So they get a lot more complicated in this section, so you can see how they sort of feed into each other and they morph into each other a lot more. So it is a more complicated section, again by perhaps just showing you how they merge together. I'm not going into 100% detail here, but I'm just giving you a bit more of a sense of some of the forms that appear. You know, with a lot of things, you could carry on zooming in and zooming in. There's lots and lots and lots of details that you could go into. Just want to give a slightly better sense, hopefully, of the kind of things that would go there. Again, I'm not a medical expert. I don't have the vocabulary to explain some of these sections. Perhaps for a future one I should learn better. Okay, and then you've got this weird kind of shape that sticks out quite a lot more, sort of crowns it off on either side. One of the reasons I find drawing the skeleton endlessly fascinating is that it's just so complex. It's very difficult to get your head wrapped around all these shapes. I guess if you're a medical expert, you'll know very well what should go where, but just purely from a visual point of view, trying to remember all this detail just on a visual footing is so complicated. I just keep going back to it and finding new fascination, new forms, things I've not seen before, angles on things that suddenly make it seem really fascinating. I guess if it was on the outside of the body, we'd be a lot more familiar with it, but I guess because it's hidden, we don't get to see it very often. And also the skeleton is something that culture often shies away from, I guess, so we don't show it, apart from maybe in certain parts of the world and Halloween and things like that. I think a lot of people are put off by the image of the skeleton, find it scary or intimidating, so it's not something we see as often perhaps. Okay, so I'm just going to spend a little bit of time adding some shading here and there. So these end shapes almost are like a plug or a socket where the ribs can attach. I'm going to do lighting almost coming from this direction, so they're going to be more in shadow here. But if I just refine this a little bit, so you almost get a shape on the edge here that is a kind of cup shape which the ribs would attach. Now I'll show you more clearly on this one, slightly exaggerate it really, and it would be the same for all of these, but I'm not going to exaggerate them quite as much on the rest, but if you get the idea. So then obviously something else like the rib would slot into that and attach to it. I'm just going to start adding some suggestions of shading just to help make sense of the form a little bit, just tidy it up. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time refining, just getting some of the shading a little bit more accurate perhaps, but not too much. Okay, for today's video tutorial, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to do 3 sections. So this is the first one. There's going to be a side view and there's going to be a rear view of the spine as well. And when you see them all in conjunction with each other, it will make sense of them a little bit more. So please subscribe. Make sure to press the bell button next to the subscribe button to guarantee that you're going to get notified. I do notice that a lot of people aren't made aware when I upload videos because they haven't clicked the little bell notification. So make sure you do that. Look through my playlist. I do landscapes and all sorts of other things as well. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to those people that have supported me over on my Patreon page. If you want to learn more about that, there is a link down in the description for that as well. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you back here again. See you later.